Obviously, I thought. I even told him I'm asking him to get it on. Yeah, I thought you asked me whatever.
It's 6 o'clock. Should we get started?
All set. Ready?
Okay, we're good. All right. I'd like to call to order this Town of Fraser Board of Trustees special meeting on Wednesday, October 29th, 2025 at 6 p.m. Can I have a roll call, please?
Katie Fisher,
Adam Quicklin.
Peggy Smith.
Julie White,
Louis Gregory.
Katie Souls.
And Brian Sirkvinick. Could I have an approval of the agenda, please?
So moved.
second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, moving right along. All right, so we are here with one topic to discuss. Thanks for everyone has arrived. Discussion and possible action regarding ordinance number 527, imposing a temporary moratorium on land use applications in the business zone district and declaring an emergency. Garrett to speak. I do want to kind of outline some format for tonight. In our planning commission meeting, we didn't give fair treatment to everybody. I don't think everyone got to speak as much as they wanted to. We also want to keep this meeting moving along and, not here all night. So I'm going to ask that everyone follows these ground rules. Every person interested in speaking is allowed 5 minutes, which includes back and forth with the board, should that occur. You do not get additional time if there's back and forth. Also, audience members cannot return to the podium to clarify any discussion items that the board is discussing in between audience comments. After every person interested in speaking has spoken once for 5 minutes, I will ask the board if they would like to give people more time. If the consensus is yes, everyone in the audience will have the opportunity to speak again for another 5 minutes. This will continue until the board feels they have enough information from the audience. I do ask that people do their best to not repeat themselves or other people's comments. If you do want to cite other people, that's great. That'll be noted for sure. But I will start cutting people off if they are being repetitive. Also, if people pursue a negative path of finger pointing and or insults, I'll cut you off at that point as well. And then I just ask that all speakers stay on topic. And that's how I want this to go tonight. So I think everyone will have ample time to say as much as they'd like. I just want to keep it flowing so that it's not dominated by a few people. All right. So, Garrett, why don't you lead us off?
Thank you, Mayor and Board. I'll just get my presentation going here. Garrett Scott, Fraser Town Planner. The ordinance before you this evening, Ordinance 527, would enact a temporary development moratorium for properties in the business zone district. So speaking to some of the background and purpose behind why this ordinance is before you all, various planning commissioners and trustees have raised concerns regarding recent development proposals in the business zone district, including predominantly residential uses. Right now, the town is nearing completion and nearing adoption of a new updated comprehensive plan. Some of the goals included in that comprehensive plan relate to promoting mixed-use development, small-scale neighborhood serving retail, and development that expands our sales or lodging tax revenues. I also want to note that currently our regulations in the business zone district allow multifamily residential dwellings as a permitted use by right, whereas single family and duplex residential are permitted as a conditional use. Furthermore, there's no requirement for commercial uses to be built in the business zone district. So for those reasons and for the concerns raised by the Planning Commission and Board, staff has been directed to provide this ordinance. So in summary, what this ordinance would do if passed this evening, it would enact a temporary 6-month moratorium on the submission, acceptance, review, processing, public hearing, and approval of certain land use applications for properties that are currently in the business zone. I do want to note that this moratorium would not apply to certain administrative approvals, such as an addition to, say, an existing commercial building that's zoned business. This moratorium would also not impact a couple recent development approvals that have gone through the public hearing and approval process with our Planning Commission and Board. And I'll speak to those momentarily. But first, to better orient ourselves, this is a map of the zone districts in Fraser. Properties in the business zone are this dark red, almost maroon color. So it contains a mix of properties that are already developed as residential uses, such as the Twin Rivers condominiums or the Sun River condos, our large commercial shopping centers, such as the Safeway and Murdoch's areas, and the sanitation district ponds to the south. But there are several significant, largely undeveloped or underdeveloped properties in the business zone district. And I'll speak to some of those here in my presentation. So going back a couple years, this development, the Riverview condos, was one that was approved by the board back in 2020. It did receive a 9-month plat extension, but ultimately the plat was recorded in 2022. And staff's determination is that development of this site could proceed as in accordance with this approved plat. This site is directly off of Highway 40 between the commercial building that currently has a flooring store and a fly fishing shop. And it's also right next to those water and sanitation district owned ponds. So again, residential use right off of Highway 40. I do want to note that again, this development would be allowed to proceed even if the moratorium is enacted. It would be allowed to proceed to a building permit phase and ultimately develop even while the moratorium is active. Another recent development shown here, the Ascent condominiums. This is on the site of and adjacent to the existing exports retail building. So just to summarize this development proposal, that current exports building does have 2 residential units as well as the retail space. This approved site plan would convert that entire building to residential uses. It's proposed to have 10 residential units or 8 new units. This site plan also included a new 17-unit building adjacent to the exports building. So in total, would create 25 new residential units. The site plan and plat for this development were approved earlier this year by the board on April 2nd. So it is still within its duration of approval. And if the applicant pursues, recording the plat and pulling a building permit, even while the moratorium is active, they would be allowed to do so. I would also note that the site plan and plat, if they are not acted upon, if the plat is not recorded, if building permits are not pulled, that 1 year approval is currently set to expire April 2nd of next year, which would occur during the moratorium period. However, the applicant can request an extension to their duration of approval. That extension must be granted by the board. But ultimately, if that extension is needed, town staff would ultimately support that and bring a recommendation of that extension to you all, recognizing that this development has already gone through that public hearing and approval process. Speaking to a couple sketch plans that the town has received and reviewed in the past year. This property, known as OVR 5, previously referred to as a Summerall parcel. Staff received a sketch plan for 100 residential units on this property in June of last year. The Planning Commission reviewed this sketch plan last August. So again, just an example of a property within our business zone district where a conceptual plan was provided to the town depicting entirely residential uses. And lastly, and most recently, the sketch plan for Meyer Lot 1, another property in the business zone district. This sketch plan depicted a majority residential uses, 228 units in total, as well as a 6,000 square foot commercial building proposed at the corner of County Road 72 and Elk Creek Drive. The Planning Commission reviewed this sketch plan just 2 months ago in August. So that is the kind of recent history of, land use approvals and conceptual plans within our business zone district. I now want to speak to the nature of the ordinance itself. And first I want to talk about temporary development moratoriums. What this map depicts is, again, not an exhaustive sample, but kind of a general sample of various counties and municipalities here in the state that have enacted temporary moratoriums on land use applications, land use approvals in the past 10 years. I recognize that the text is probably a little difficult to read, but the point of this is that it spans, it kind of runs the gamut from large cities on the Front Range like Denver and Aurora, smaller municipalities such as Buena Vista or Salida, Hot Sulphur Springs here in Grand County, and counties themselves can enact these moratoriums, such as Boulder County and Park County in recent history. I also want to note that the vast majority of these moratoriums were passed as emergency ordinances. The one exception out of these that I could find was Boulder County. They passed it September of 2024 and it became effective in January of this year. So they did allow a 3-month time period for these applications. I think it was specific to single family residential properties above a certain size in unincorporated Boulder County. But again, all the other examples that I could find and that are shown here were passed as emergency ordinances. And the reason being is that, again, I'll speak to this more in a bit, but to pass an ordinance as an emergency ordinance simply means that it takes effect immediately. And when you're evaluating potential changes to regulations that affect these land use applications, having a gap of time between when the moratorium is passed and when it becomes effective simply creates this window where land use applications could come in, be processed, reviewed, and potentially even approved while new regulations are being considered. So it effectively just undermines the intention of that ordinance itself. So again, just to further emphasize, the emergency designation of this ordinance isn't, an emergency in the sense of a natural disaster or a state of emergency. But again, it's simply to designate that the purpose of this ordinance would be undermined if not immediately effective. And in the case with this ordinance, the immediate effectiveness of this ordinance is needed so that, again, there's no land use applications processed under our old regulations, and that the town is able to evaluate new regulations that could help mitigate any potential harm to long-term viability of the town in terms of sales and property tax revenue generation associated with future development on these properties in the business zone. I also want to note that here in Fraser, the town has passed many emergency ordinances. This is just a sampling of a few, ranging from things such as adopting the state's model traffic code, moratoriums on medical and retail marijuana facilities while the town worked to enact regulations related to those uses, and things like water conservation measures. A quick search of our history of ordinance revealed around 20 emergency ordinances that the town has passed since our incorporation. So emergency ordinances are a commonplace tool recognized by state law that many municipalities and counties utilize for a variety of purposes. So in conclusion, staff ultimately recommends that you all approve this ordinance and specifically approve it as an emergency ordinance so it becomes effective immediately. In the months that follow, while this moratorium is in place, town staff will hold a series of workshops and discussions, certainly with the Planning Commission and likely with you all, with the Board of Trustees as well, and certainly the public, to evaluate potential changes that could be made to our regulations in the business zone district. I also just want to say that it is staff's firm commitment that any new regulations, if ultimately adopted, those new regulations would be made effective within the 6-month moratorium period or sooner so that there is not a need to extend this moratorium. I stand for any questions that you may have, and thank you for your time and attention.
That's the question. So, Garrett, how common is it for municipalities to allow residential development within a business district? Because that seems like a contradiction.
Sure. I may ask Alan to speak to this a little bit, but we did give a presentation to the Planning Commission just last week where Alan and I pulled some preliminary research into other municipalities, the other ones here in Grand County, a couple peer CAS, Colorado Association of Ski Town Communities, as well as a couple examples of larger municipalities on the Front Range. And by and large, it is common for municipalities to have a zone district that allows commercial uses but prohibits residential uses. What is more typical is maybe what we have, where multifamily is allowed as a use by right in addition to commercial. And I will also say what is also very common is certain requirements on a certain amount of commercial uses in these zone districts, kind of similar to our requirements that are already part of our Riverwalk zone regulations for ground floor commercial uses on certain street frontages and things like that. That's very common in other municipalities.
Yeah, I don't really have any specifics to add. The presentation from last week and the staff report included like an inventory of some local communities, Grand County, Summit County, and a few other ones. And it was a pretty wide range of examples of zone districts that prohibited it outright. Those were maybe more limited. And then I think the bulk was ones that allowed it with some additional specific requirements on top of, what otherwise would have been allowed in like a straight multifamily or just standard residential zone district.
But we could rezone, like the Summerall property is zone business, which doesn't make sense to me because it's right in the middle of the Grand Park, right? That could be rezoned to residential, I assume, right?
I'd have to refer to our code as far as town initiated rezonings of properties. There are certain stipulations around that. off the top of my head. It deals with certain acreage and certain number of properties that have to be rezoned at the same time. I can verify here momentarily, but I'm not sure if we could rezone just that Summerall OVR5 parcel by itself, for example. Again, if it was a town-led rezoning, if it's a property owner-led rezoning, that's different.
Alan, you just mentioned a staff memo that was provided. Was that to the planning commission? Right, yeah, that was last. How come it was not provided to us? I'm kind of uneducated on this topic at this point in time. All I've seen is the ordinance twice at the last board meeting and this meeting. I, I, I don't know, it makes me question the process or if we're not being provided. It seems like this is a topic that should have had discussion, a broader discussion. I don't know how we got to this point, and I'm kind of confused by that.
I think that's a fair point to make. I think from staff's perspective, maybe just the fact that there is overlap in the membership of the planning commission and board. It's maybe recognized that that overlap is meant to help facilitate maybe some of that knowledge sharing and discussion. I will say though that again, as we evaluate these potential changes, we are certainly willing and would welcome joint meetings with both bodies so that the board, as the final authority that approves any changes to our land use regulations, is involved in those conversations early on. I would also just caveat that the discussion that we had last week with our planning commission was a very high level one. We simply provided some, informational research on zoning regulations that are on the books in other municipalities. That is available for anyone's reference, the board and the public, certainly, but I do apologize for not.
I don't receive the planning commission's agenda. I've had a 3-minute conversation on the phone about this.
Sure.
And that's my background education.
You can log in to the website. You can log into the website and download their packet and look at the information that's in there.
But we can be proactive as well if there was
Yeah.
something with this kind of gravity that involves all of us, is my point. I'm kind of taken aback by my ignorance, I guess.
Fair enough.
I think all of this kind of presented itself as we worked through, the master plan, and then we get to budget time and we start looking at sales tax revenues and property tax revenues. And so all of a sudden it becomes kind of apparent that we're running a business in this town, and the business is based on sales tax. It's not on property taxes. We have been privileged to host the hospital, the rec center, the movie theater, the school, the library, fire department, and potentially the police department in the future. So with all of those not tax-paying entities, we're providing a service for the community at large. And we really have to be careful about how we move forward, because we have a tremendous amount of residential on the books that could be developed. And if we all of a sudden take what we have as commercial and turn it into residential, it goes away forever. If it was a shopping center like Murdoch's and we decided to tear it down and build something else, we could do that. But you can't do that once it's houses. It's owned by individual people. So I think to me, I would like to spend 6 months working with the community, understanding what they want, what makes sense for the community at large. And if it turns out that at the end of this exercise, everybody decides that the 372 residential units and 6,000 square feet of commercial space is the best and highest use for that particular parcel, then that would be approved. But I don't think that it has to be an emergency at this point. It's not the last buildable property in town. And Clark has had the Elk Creek condos, which is 46 units, Ascent condominiums, 25 units. Alpenglow condos, 204 units. The Village at Grand Park, 184 units. West Mountain filing, number 1, 79 residential units. All of those are in the pipeline, have been approved and are ready, are shovel ready. So I am not buying this as an emergency because we don't have a place for anybody to live. There's lots of opportunities for the approved projects, and he also has 462 residential units in for approval in Byers Peak Ranch. So he's not bored. And, you know, it gives us an opportunity to evaluate what's best for the community at large and work with our other partners, the town of Winter Park and all of these entities that we host on how we make this community work for everybody.
I guess I question our adherence to our economic model, it being so dependent on sales tax. We have probably $3 billion worth of development approved between the annexation and vesting. And that's at today's level. I've always thought that we should be looking at property tax to support things that support our properties. And that includes businesses and residences. So, you know, I think in time we should be adjusting our economic model to meet the times as well. So, I fear that we're so dependent on sales tax and that we keep going to sales tax, and that makes things like this happen. I think we need to look at our books in general and say, hey, what are the markets? I mean, when you have $3 billion, and I'm estimating that that's redevelopment and 2,000 units in Grand Park, at probably $1 million plus per unit at today's value. That's a lot of money we're leaving on the table. And so I don't know. I'm questioning some things bigger about what we do, but because this is the result of what we do.
Well, we're not asking for an increase in sales tax from the businesses.
No, but we're
Is there
asking to
for-
protect the commercial space when we're not even at a critical mass. There's buildings.
I'm not talking about doing this tomorrow or next week. I'm talking 6 months, 6 years, 10 years, 25 years.
And I am as well.
So the reality, I think, is we have 5.88 mils, and that's our tax basis. We are sadly the host of 2 Metro District communities that take the majority of the sales tax revenue. If we put something on the ballot that says we want to increase our property taxes to 10 mils, I don't think it's going to pass, because Grand Park is paying 50 mils and Rendezvous is paying 24 mils now. So we made that decision a long time ago to let the metro districts in, and what the ultimate problem is that tends to squeeze any revenues for schools, fire stations, anything, because people look at their property tax bill and they don't think, oh my God, the town of Fraser's rich. That's what they think.
No,
And-
I think the rec district and the school district.
Well,
That'd
but
be my tax bill.
they don't understand that the majority of it in these metro districts is going to the developers.
I mean, I kind of agree property tax probably should be higher than it is, but that would have to go to the voters at a referendum, and I don't think anyone's going to vote for a proper tax increase at this point. I don't see that happening anytime soon. The other thing that concerns me, and maybe this is really hypothetical, but what happens if, say, Safeway or Murdoch's left Fraser? We wouldn't have anything. I mean, it would be disastrous.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, could that happen? Maybe,
Or it burns
but
down.
probably not anytime real soon.
We're out for a year.
Exactly. So we need to protect ourselves.
I think I was making the argument for property taxes. So it justified both of us.
Garrett, what does the timeline look like as far as when we can start these conversations? Like, I'd like to get this moving as quickly as possible.
Yeah, again, so as Trustee Quicklin mentioned, you know, this ordinance was brought to the board 2 weeks ago. It was not acted upon. The intention was to initiate, these discussions around potential changes to our regulations immediately after the adoption of that ordinance. And even though the ordinance wasn't adopted 2 weeks ago, we still initiated the discussion last week with the Planning Commission. So I would say the discussion has been initiated, it's already underway, and staff is committed to continuing it during the 6-month moratorium period if enacted.
So how are we looking on the final for the comprehensive plan? What
Yeah.
date will that be? We have a date on that?
So the current schedule, we do have a bit of a change from what was last communicated to the board. I forget what meeting that was at when I spoke to you all about that timeline. With the original intent of getting adopted before the end of the year, we are now pushing that out to February with the main reason to allow ample time for public comment and review. So the current schedule has us publishing the draft plan at the end of next week. It will be reviewed by the Planning Commission and open for public discussion. We will allow public comment to be taken on the plan through the month of November into December. And then over Christmas, New Year's into early January, town staff will work to take in, consolidate, and read through those comments, make updates as needed to the plan, and then bring it back to the Planning Commission in January for a recommendation of approval and adoption, and then the board would adopt it in February. So a bit of a delay to, what was previously communicated, but again, still forthcoming.
Okay. Good.
I'll save some comments until after we open it up to the public, but are you guys ready? All right, so just a reminder, we'll do a round of 5 minutes for anybody that wants to speak, and then we'll discuss if we want to do another round of 5 minutes and keep doing that until we feel like we've got it nailed down. So yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Parnell Quinn, Fraser. I got a handout. Can I approach?
Mhm.
So to Adam's question about, is this meeting a legal meeting?
I didn't say that.
Just letting you know, as this may or may not be a legal meeting based on how you guys did it. When you advertised this on November 5th.
For the record.
Just thought you might want to look at this before you vote.
Give a copy to our attorney also.
Sure.
Do you have an extra one?
I'll give mine when I get done.
Great, thank you.
Oh, I do have an extra. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure you guys look at the section about middle of the page where it says furthermore, under CRS 18-8-404, official misconduct is a second-degree offense. This gives up your immunity. So if there is a lawsuit that this meeting is a violation due to how you got to this meeting from the executive session you guys had in your planning commission on August 27th, that seems like you guys talked about some stuff you weren't supposed to talk about. But I would be very careful how you vote tonight, just so you know. What I really want to talk to you guys about is being a resident of Fraser since 1979 and being on the board for 12 years. This subject was brought up multiple times, and the Meyer properties were considered not valuable commercial space multiple times. The valuable space is closer to Winter Park, and that's Grand Park's north section. The reason it's valuable is we can get the tax dollars from Winter Park. We can get it from their tourists, their residents. What Fraser's missing on this end of the valley is residents. We need more houses, more people living here year round. That's why we chose to spend, was it 40 million or 64 million? I keep getting confused on our workforce housing project that we're doing in town. This is what we're supposed to be working on. What Clark's bringing to the town is exactly what the town needs in the right area. Look at Vicious Cycle. It's one of the most popular bars in town because it's surrounded by residential housing. Katie Fisher's bar is one of the nicest bars in town because it's surrounded by residential housing. We can all walk to it. We can walk home and we're safe. We don't have to drive. And Brian, you talked about being rude and making bad comments. I would like you to tell your trustees to do the same, because as a resident of Fraser, I don't feel that we're a third world country, Peggy. We've worked hard our whole lives and we've tried very hard to make this a very pleasant for people like you to come to. So calling us a third world town was quite rude at the last meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, who wants to go next?
Good evening, everyone. Brandon Colletti, John Grant Park. All right, so coming out of the Planning Commission meeting, the crux of why we're pushing this is driving sales tax revenue, which makes a lot of sense. Grand Park is currently and has been currently trying to bring on 40,000 square feet of commercial real estate on the north end of, or south end of Fraser, north end of Grand Park there. We all call them the yellow buildings, but the village at Grand Park, right? And if it just seems very convoluted to me that if this was a very, which it makes a lot of sense, absolutely. We need sales tax, we need businesses. Why? It just doesn't make sense to me. It's just kind of unclear why we haven't turned on 40,000 square feet of commercial real estate, right? And it's a lot. Would really add to the tax base and could have been adding to this tax base for years. And that's okay. We just want to make sure that we're consistent and congruent as a town board and as citizens who our constituency who elect you guys are consistent in delivering affordable housing, housing in general, right? Very, very important. But then ordinance 527 is really meant to block housing. I mean, that's clear. It's what the ordinance says. And then to use the ordinance through the vehicle by declaring a state of emergency, we all agree there's no emergency in that we're using that vehicle to make it immediately active, right? And nothing against the town. You guys have been doing an excellent job on what's going on in the North End, excellent job in the Riverwalk District. All that stuff would be amazing. It's going to be amazing. We're really excited to see it. Very much so. But approaching this and a lot of the constituency, I mean, I've been to a few planning meetings. There was a lot of public comment. And then to your point, Adam, you know, it's interesting that you guys aren't as informed that this sort of was slid into one meeting table because there wasn't a quorum, and then kind of came up again in the planning, which a great presentation by the town planners, absolutely. But hearing that you guys aren't even aware that what's allowed in current other municipalities, and a lot of those municipalities are very, very different than what we are. It's good to use referential data like that, but very important not to miss what it is. We got to compare apples to apples, right? Arvada, not apples to apples. I mean, maybe Kremling, which again, they allow by right multifamily units. It's allowed. And as anything that's a comparative analysis to what's close to us, they allow this, right? And it's a shame that some of you guys didn't see that presentation. It was well put together and it really vast overlay of things that have nothing to do with us, not pertinent to us, and things that are towns and municipalities that are very much closer to what we are. And all of those municipalities allow this mixed use thing. And then, of course, we all know that the more housing we bring on, 372 units, particularly, what does that do to high country houses, one bedroom, $2,000 unit? It drops in price because we're providing brand new, high quality, well built units, right? So really, really important to understand why, I guess, we have 40,000 square feet commercial real estate, really close. Tower went up today. I don't know if you guys saw that. It's awesome, really cool to see. But again, we're also entitled to 300,000 square feet of commercial, and we're private land developers. If there was demand for that commercial real estate, we would meet it. It is our job to meet it. We haven't even touched on the available square footage between Winter Park and Fraser. I mean, I have a rough estimate of over 100,000 square feet of commercial real estate that's currently on the market, some of which that has been on the market for years. So taking this all in the big picture, not sure this is the right vehicle. Absolutely understand the sales tax push. It's very important. It runs our town. Again, let's partner on this thing. We're experts at what we do, and a lot of the stuff that we're bringing to the town will definitely benefit and drive a lot of the sales tax revenue. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
All right, who wants to go next? Is there anybody online?
If anybody online would like to speak, please raise your hand.
Yeah, Steph, you can go ahead.
Hi, guys. I am Stephanie Best and I own Black Tie Ski Rentals. And I am just here to oppose this moratorium. I feel like right now I have an employee that cannot get in. I'm trying to get him in from New England, and my employee housing is full, and he cannot find a place. And so we need the housing. We do not need empty commercial space to sit there. As the previous speaker just mentioned, we have so much, the Arrow unit, the 40,000 going in at the Village. I'm just going to say this, I kind of feel like this is because you don't want the competition with the Park and 40. What is that project? Is that San Luis Landing or something?
Yeah.
That's what I truly feel, is that the town does not want the competition to that project. And I think that's wrong. Thank you.
Thanks, Steph. That was brought up in another letter that the board got as well. We did receive some really well written letters, just to let the public know if they haven't seen them. But yeah, we'll keep going. Are there more people that want to speak?
Hi, I'm Kathy Schofield. Good evening to the mayor and the board of trustees. I am here to oppose the ordinance. I wrote a letter today in great detail, but I just wanted to come forward verbally and share my opposition for this. I think that the ordinance is an unnecessary measure. And I feel as though because there are no applications that are currently being presented, that it is a preemptive ordinance that is unnecessary and sends a very disturbing message about Fraser being not open to development, not open to housing, and frankly, closed for business. So I also wanted to just say in the ordinance itself, where it says, excuse me, that the ordinance is necessary for the immediate preservation of public health, safety, and welfare, and this ordinance should be therefore become effective upon adoption consistent with CRS, blah, blah, blah number. I think that the emergency measure is an abuse of power. I don't see any need to do this if there are no applications pending. Thanks. I owned a property in Fraser since 2006.
Okay, thank you.
Nice.
Anybody else?
Hi, Clark Lipscomb for the record. If you don't mind, I'm going to approach with some photos for you all. Please, maybe Adam, maybe share.
Stuck together.
You guys have to share.
All
We
right.
can share.
So what I just passed out to you are pictures of properties in Winter Park, Fraser that are vacant today or have space available to lease. And many of these have been on the market. I'm not going to regurgitate what Parnell touched on, but I think one of the things that was evident to me in the presentation at the Planning Commission, and I hope, did you all receive my email today? And did any of you get to watch the Planning Commission YouTube? You were there, Brian and Peggy, but Brian and Peggy were there. But did anyone else get to watch the Planning Commission? Okay. Well, I'm going to try not to regurgitate that, but I was hoping that you all would watch it because it was a meaningful discussion and I think had a lot of good things that were touched on. I think this feels very targeted. And Peggy, all I heard her just talk about in her comments was Clark this, Clark that, Clark's building this. And it's unfortunate that we have such a divisive relationship and that we can't collaborate more than what we have done. As you all know, I grew up in a small town. My families are in businesses in small towns. And I've lived in the Colorado Rocky Mountains since I got out of college. And my kids are born and raised here. I run a number of retail businesses here and have significant operations as well. And I've studied really every type of real estate you can imagine in small resort communities, and particularly in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado and ski town related. So I have a little bit of experience doing things and like to study what has worked in other places and also what has failed in other places, hoping that we might avoid certain things and be able to emulate things that others have done successfully. So what I saw at the presentation from the town staff was misguided, lacked that kind of experience, and was comparing us to towns like Arvada, Wheat Ridge, Golden. That over what's more concerning was the presentation tonight, where they spent a whole lot of time talking about what other people in the states has done, trying to justify this non-emergency moratorium. Peggy admitted at the Planning Commission, there's no emergency. What I think is truly missing here is an inventory of what you do have and what is out there. There's like if your staff's spending all this time studying what others are doing, why aren't we studying in our own backyard? And why aren't we looking at every property that's out there? Here's a good start with photos. Looking at every piece of vacant land that's out there and studying those. What I do know is we have a housing crisis. Okay. We've had a housing crisis. You guys declared a housing crisis. You're doing St. Louis Landing. That's an interesting comment that, is this because you're scared of the competition? I would hope that's not it, but I hadn't thought about that. And that to me is, concerning. I really think you all need to take a step back and realize that where we're building housing, and we're building 60 more mill apartments right now, they're under construction. These development projects, the infrastructure for the Ascent exports project, 4W.1 and Meyer Lot 2 is just about to start. The water sewer is just about to start. We go through a process of getting projects approved. That takes a year. Then you've got to tee up the contractors, et cetera. We have roughly 5 to 6 months to do work here. This isn't a 6-month moratorium. This is 18 months. This is stalling everything out. And it's saying we don't need housing. So as a business owner, I know that the number one thing we need are employees. And we need a diverse inventory of housing. And that's what our company is trying to deliver. Peggy touched on a whole lot of projects that we're working on. I don't think my 5 minutes is up.
No, I'll give you another 30 seconds. I didn't warn you.
But Peggy touched on a whole lot of projects and some of which, by the way, aren't approved, the village. But that's all about having a diverse inventory of residential offerings in housing, building housing inventory. You can't create demand for commercial just by mandating it. You'll have stuff sit. So vote no on this moratorium and then start collaborating. We're open. We'd be glad to coordinate a developer group and have the town staff sit with the developer group. You guys are welcome to sit with them and talk about what can we do together. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else from the audience?
Hi, my name is Mark Gibson. I live in Grand Lake. I run a property management firm with many properties in the southern Fraser Valley, which is why I care very much about the future of this place. I've owned property here since '96. I think it's terrific that you're taking a look at long-term financing, looking at the economic solvency of the town and its services. I can't think of anything more important, particularly when you've got a tax system as skewed as it is. But if you're going to go duck hunting, you really need to go where the ducks are. If this problem is truly of emergency status, and we've got a tax problem, then we ought to do a freeze on everything, including every intergovernmental agreement, including agreements with the county, including St. Louis Landing, on down the list. And if the idea of trying to fix our long-term solvency based on commercial retail tax simply doesn't meet the smell test. So let's go back and say, okay, if we've got $3 billion in new capital construction coming in, seems like there's quite a few ducks to go hunting there. If you can't pass a 10 mil tax, then ask the question, why not? And what's it going to take to get that passed, rather than going off on some narrow freeze? Let's look at let's look at the whole damn plan in toto and come up with a real solution here. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Hey, board.
I like the graphics, Clark. Those are beneficial. I think that's a good starting place for our discussion as we move forward, and looking at where the ducks are is what people have said, that we need to look at how this is all going to work. And I think this is a good place to start. Yeah.
You know, and Kathy, to your point about how there's no application in place right now, that makes me feel like what better time to put a hold on applications. Not much is going on. There's clearly a lot of construction happening right now. You know, things are happening. And Market Street is looking awesome. Thank you very much, Mr. Lipscomb, for all of the work you've done there. But it does seem like this will create that window where where the pressure's off, that we can all meet together and work for the best good, for the town, for you guys, and for the town, and take a look at these other mechanisms and what's going to change. It was interesting, of course, we all know 2020 basically is what pulled the rug out from under Market Street, everybody coming in. And I can't help but think that the pendulum swings, and as it's swinging back, there's people that will want to go back to shopping locally. And a lot of the people that we bring in from out of town, they're the ones that are going to want to spend that money in local businesses. We'll see. But it gives us an opportunity to all meet, and, you know, it's 6 months. Poof. It's going to go by. Poof. I think it'll be a really good opportunity for the town to get our feet under us. And I can see too for our town staff that if we were to say, well, you know, we'll wait for another 2-3 weeks to put this on, then they could be inundated and overwhelmed. And so I support this. Oh, yeah. Is that okay?
If-
Fine with me.
if
Sorry
the
if I
board
misquoted
is
you.
open to it, then we're going to open up 5 minutes to everybody. Just
Yeah.
Yes, just respectfully. I mean,
Yes.
my point about the fact that there are no current applications is not to say, well, now's a good time to put a delay and a
Right.
preemptive strike, so to speak, on further development.
Yeah,
I mean,
well, I-
essentially, what you're saying by delaying things by 6 months is that you're delaying things for more than 18 months because we know we have short windows of opportunity to build. And if we're not taking anything else, what we're saying to the investment community and people who might be interested in coming here is don't bother. We're not an easy place to do business with. So I think that the point about stopping and not accepting any new applications says, go elsewhere. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying your perspective.
go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry, behind you, Clark.
Well, just really quickly, I'd like to point out that adding houses, and you guys read my letter, but these people didn't get my letter, so I'm just going to make the point. Adding rooftops and adding housing inventory not only helps our businesses with employee base and more people living here, et cetera, it's helped them generate more revenue. And similarly, when I came here, Fraser was basically broke. Katie, you were here. Peggy, you maybe had just gotten here. I think Adam and Katie was here, but literally I can remember meetings we run on zero budgets. There's no money coming in. It was only Safeway, city markets opening. Oh my God, the sky's falling. What are we going to do? Today you have pretty significant fund balances. Okay, your budget's much larger, your staff's much larger, and that's largely due to Grand Park and Rendezvous. The developments that everybody was scared of that have happened and are still happening, as they grow, the town's going to continue to have growth in its sales tax revenue because those people are going to shop at Safeway. They're going to go to Sharky's. They're going to go to the Birdie Lounge. They're going to go to Fisher's Bar. Bottom line is adding more people helps our current businesses prosper more. And right now, I think it's hard to be a business owner in this town. I think it's hard to have employees. I think it's hard to generate enough revenue to cover taxes and bills, et cetera. I think you're way better off to focus on solving housing and get a robust business community going that shows there's demand here. There is no one knocking down doors to go do commercial. So you're going to basically sterilize everything. And 18 months is a long time. Dollars have options. Dollars have options. They will go somewhere else and invest. So come on. I mean, if you want to change your code, if you want to address, how commercial evolves, you got to first recognize you got to have people and a demand. You can't make a demand by just mandating it. It will sit idle. And the land that we're talking about, there are actually applications pending. The sketch plans for the Meyer lots, those have applications. We've gotten full responses on those. So 2 of those parcels that are in with full residential that have been fully designed, those have been sitting since 1981. 1981, guys. So, I mean, think about that. It's 45 years. Really, if you think if commercial were viable, it would have been done there, right? So we got rid of the Forest Meadow Solar subdivision, changed them to this B zoning because we thought the flexibility would be important for those parcels. And now we see where there's real demand and need, housing, and it's a great location for it, and we're trying to be stopped. And that's not great. So changing the rules when all the money's already been spent on design, et cetera, not good at all from a perspective of outside people looking in or somebody that spent the money doing the design. So again, vote no on this.
So yeah, I have 2 comments and 2 questions.
And Clark, if you want to stay at the podium, you've got 2 more minutes.
No, actually.
Oh, it's not?
No,
Oh, okay.
General comments. I think we need to diversify the town's income portfolio. And secondly, I do think that housing needs to reach a critical mass to support commercial. And my questions actually are for Garrett. Reading the email yesterday, it sounds like this would not be enacted immediately. It would be enacted 2 days ago because there's applications that were submitted yesterday that it would apply to that would be put on pause.
Yeah, so just to clarify about statements that were made about there are no pending land use applications.
Thank you.
That was no longer true as of Monday. On Monday, town staff received a submittal for site plans for Meyer Lot 1 and 2. These are the properties to the west, southeast of the Murdoch Center. These site plans combined propose around 370 residential units and that 6,000 square foot commercial building. So I just want to clarify, town staff, when we receive a land use application, we have 5 business days to determine whether or not it is complete. Certainly, given the time needed to prepare for this meeting, town staff has not yet determined completeness for these site plans for Meyer Lot 1 and 2. So if the board chooses to pass this moratorium today, those applications could not be determined complete because that is prohibited through the language of this moratorium. And therefore those site plans would effectively be put on pause until new regulations are adopted. If the moratorium does not pass this evening, town staff will determine completeness of these applications. And once determined to be complete, they will be reviewed and processed and ultimately brought for approval under the current business zone regulations. So in summary, part of the reason of the emergency ordinance, I would argue, is to prevent situations exactly like this. It was a mistake by the town to bring this ordinance forward 2 weeks ago when it could not be acted upon. In my opinion, that allowed the developer to take the time to finalize these site plans and submit them to the town and somewhat raise the stakes on this ordinance and create this situation. But again, if the ordinance is not passed as an emergency ordinance, then it effectively just undermines the intention of this process, which I think regardless of whether the moratorium passes, town staff will still undertake a review and possible amendment to regulations in our business zone district. We will take that process as far as the planning commission and board would like us to take it. But the simple reality is that that process will not be effective without this moratorium because these site plans have been submitted.
Okay,
Are there any
I have 3
questions with that?
questions now, yeah. So is that trigger for starting that timeline or defined in code, meaning is it subjective? Is it when it's submitted or deemed complete? Is that defined in code or is that a subjective decision?
As far as when the moratorium applies, or could you
No,
clarify?
I mean, the applications were turned in 2 days ago.
Yes.
And you said you have 5 days to, because it's still in that 5-day period, we can put it on pause. Is that defined in code or is that a subjective decision?
That 5 business day window is defined in our code very clearly.
I understand that, but the trigger for starting the clock, I mean, to me, it seems like when you submit an application, that's when it's submitted. If you could determine its completeness in a day or 5 days. And that seems pretty subjective. And I'll move on to my last question. I'm trying to think about a different approach to this. You know, if we're working on these code changes currently, can these code changes be proposed to us as emergency ordinances so that they can be implemented immediately as they're developed?
Yes, and I will maybe speak to your first point. Yes, the time frame within that 5 business day window when completeness is determined, I guess you could argue it's subjective. It's ultimately up to the capacity of town staff to intake that application, review the materials, and provide that determination. But our code is clear that we have 5 business days to do so. And that point where completeness is determined is the point of initiation in the land use review process. That is also very clear in our code. So this 5 business day window, again, when an application is received but not yet reviewed for that completeness, we are at this point where it is not, able to be processed at this time. Completeness must happen. To your second question, yes, any ordinances that would enact changes to our regulations in the business zone district. Those could be passed as emergency ordinances. It simply requires that declaration of an emergency and 3/4 of the trustees voting in affirmative to pass that ordinance. And if we're getting close to the end of that 6-month period, I think that's certainly something we would look to do so that we don't have this time period where regulations are enacted but not yet effective, and then the moratorium ends and you have a window on the back end of the
It
moratorium.
just seems to me that that would been a less evasive approach to bring, to develop these codes and bring them forward rather than just saying kaput. Yeah. I don't know. Those are my comments.
Feel like that would be a little, hold on, that would be, I would feel worse about that, just based purely on transparency. You know, you could argue that a moratorium, you like it or you don't, but at least we're giving 6 months for everyone to give their opinion before we change the code. If we were to just do an emergency code change and I was a landowner, I'd be pretty mad about that if I had zero input. So, I don't know. I think the gentleman back there had, yeah. And then we could probably do it again.
My name is Kevin Cook. I'm not privy to all the details of, the intricacies of all these things, but I would rise as an hourly worker, as a blue collar worker, as somebody that lives here in the heart of Fraser. And, from my experiences here, the biggest problem that we have is stable housing. I mean, the number of people that I know that are living 4 deep in a 2-bedroom that are paying a significant portion of their income to what amounts to a company town in the way that some of these, employee housing agreements are set up. I think it's unfair. I mean, I've been coming up here I've lived in Colorado for over 12 years. I've lived in Fraser for 2, and I've been coming into the valley for about the last decade. And I ultimately bought property in Clear Creek County because the building codes were a little easier and the property was a little cheaper. But I've grown to love this valley, and this is where I would hope to retire and ultimately spend the rest of my days. But the lack of available and affordable housing is the biggest problem that faces the people that work in this town, that run this town, that supply all the services. I pay $3,200 a month for my rent. That is more than my income can really support.
Yeah.
And I mean, to sum it up, I mean, I basically have to work 4 jobs and about 80 hours a week to be able to survive. And the number of people that I've seen that because of their housing arrangements are kicked out of their house within 3 days of being fired, there is a housing crisis, but there's also an unspoken homelessness crisis in this county. The number of people that have to live on somebody's couch or in an unspoken agreement that, is honestly inhumane. I mean, there are people living within 1,000 feet of this building that are living in third world conditions because we have a housing crisis. And that's what drove me to be here today. I've talked to, multiple people who are hourly workers, who are blue collar workers, who, don't really feel comfortable coming into a setting like this and speaking on this level. But, the guy who's washing your dishes and cooking your food and, serving at your bar may not know where he's going to sleep tonight. And, on the other end of that, if we have more commercial development, we have more stable businesses, we have more income, we have more places that people can work. And there's a lot of people that come through here as seasonal workers that would like to be permanent residents. And if we had more commercial business and we had more affordable real estate, we had more affordable rentals, that's only going to benefit the town in the long run. And, with whatever your opinion is on Altera, like this town it's a boom town. We might not be the next Aspen or Vail, but we're right there in that caliber. And we need to prepare for the, mass influx of humanity that's going to come with, all the development that's happening on the north end of the resort now. And, limiting economic activity, economic development, trying to constrain it through legal means is it's anti-business. It's anti-freedom. I think we all want a stable community. We don't want to exclude people. And, I think that anything that would prohibit reducing the price of living here, anything that would reduce, the economic activity here is hurting all of us. And thank you for your time, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank
you. Let me kind of just clarify something. We're not talking about affordable housing here. All the projects that I can't pull up that document you sent, all the projects that have been approved, those are market rate housing projects, right?
Yes.
So there's hundreds and hundreds of units that have been approved, and you're not building them because there's not demand. The market's soft. I don't know how many units are sitting across that are for sale that aren't moving. I don't see the big demand for market rate housing right now. Affordable housing, yes, I see that. But for market rate housing, the market it's not what it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago.
Yep, go ahead.
So just to address, thanks, Louis, for the comments. This is
Introduce yourself for people that can't see.
Brandy Clyde Young, Grand Park. This is economics 101. Housing reduces prices across the board. How can High Country House for a 1-bedroom? When was that place built? You got 77.
Yeah.
Built in 1977. I've been in a couple of them. Ooh, brutal. Charge nearly $2,000 for a 1-bedroom. Now, if we realize, to your point, Louis, if we realize 337 units within the vicinity of town and even High Country House, let's say, what does that do to High Country House management? All of I could move into Mill Apartments for $1,600 for a 1-bedroom. Oh crap, now we have to compete. Well, now we drop High Country House to $1,400. And competition encourages reducing prices on housing across the board.
I don't see housing prices going down.
Of course you do. It's exactly what's happening right now.
They're stabilizing, but
No, they're 20%. My house is listed right now. I've done three price drops on it. My last showing was in April. I'm taking it off the market because I can't get what I want for it, right? And I'm just sit on it. They're coming down, and it will continue to come down if we allow housing to be built. It's economics. I mean, just take High Country.
Let's drive to that. I mean, you're not going to fire sale it, right? You took it off the market. You're not going to give it away.
No, of course. We
Right.
meet
I mean,
demand. We're a for-profit company. That means
It's coming down. It's normalizing. It's stabilizing, but I don't see there's going to be a huge bottom to the market. I could be wrong, but
No, of
people
course
aren't going to
not.
give away their houses. They're
No,
not going to lose
absolutely.
money on their houses if they can help it.
Sure. But saying that what we need is affordable housing to restrict market rate housing, I think there's an innate fallacy in that logic. Because again, economics 101, the more supply we have, the more competition, you have to then compete on price when you hit price equilibrium.
I think we need both.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
But-
No, I totally agree. But to say that, we need affordable housing, absolutely, but we need housing. That is what's driven. And then when we have a national, a worldwide pandemic, then demand goes through the roof. If we had been preparing for this, let's say the micro cottages over, which is not part of the town anymore, we wish it was, but let's just say those things were online. That helps buffer that huge spike in demand because there's more units available to compete with, right? So if we keep taking this position to be very cautious and letting, be it the market rate or affordable, housing in general increases the supply, which all across the board will bring down the price.
I mean, the problem with that is that it takes a while to build, to plan and build, right? And you're always behind the curve. You can't predict what's going to happen in 2 years. We may have another boom, but we don't know.
By 6 months.
And the developers don't know. So they have to do their best projection and it's a business risk. You're gambling on what you think's going to happen. Sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong.
Absolutely. But again, what we're talking about here is driving sales tax revenue. And a moratorium, in the board's eyes, is the vehicle to achieve rezoning in B zone districts, right? There is so much commercial. What are we doing? We're just going to create. Bob Novak, unfortunately, wasn't able to be here. He's down in Denver. He's the guy who developed Winter Park, Arrow, right? The Arrow with the
Arrow.
commercial on frontage that's been empty for years. And let's learn from what Winter Park did in that circumstances. They required commercial on highway frontage, Highway 40 frontage, required it. He went to their planning commission 3 times for a variance to rezone that, selling the heck out of the condos. There's one lease there. And again, if we're a for-profit company, if we know there's demand for commercial, we'll do commercial. We know there's demand for housing. That's why we're doing housing. It's there. We'll sell it. And Brian Novak's a great example. Unfortunately, wasn't able to be here, but it's a very salient point. Let's not repeat
30
the
seconds.
mistake that our neighbors did. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Brandon. Can I go to Anne? She's had her hand up for a long time.
Better let her know.
And Ann Gibson, you can go ahead.
Did you unmute her?
There's another hand raised. Oh, Ann just unmuted. Go ahead, Ann.
Hi, Ann Gibson. I know we all agree that we have a serious housing shortage, and actually, according to the Fraser River Valley Housing Partnership, they do such a great job of doing these housing assessments, and they've identified that there's more than a 700 unit gap in rental and home ownership properties. Regarding this ordinance, this moratorium, I see that there is so much more to lose than to gain by passing this ordinance. This moratorium will slow or end housing construction. It's going to hurt local jobs, and it shows locals that their housing needs are not important at a time when the community needs more housing and steady momentum. I know that a lot of concerned builders are asking if this moratorium will mean that the town will stall or halt all housing other than their own development, your own development, which is the St. Louis Landing. I believe that we're pretty fortunate to have developers that want to build housing in Fraser, housing that locals and local families will be able to afford, rather than do what other resorts have done, where there isn't market rate housing, a diverse inventory of housing in the towns. Employees are in Vale are forced to live in Gypsum. Aspen locals are commuting from Rifle, Telluride. They live in Montrose. Crested Butte, they're in Gunnison. I think this is a project that can make a huge difference in enabling the economy to grow significantly. Kind of the bottom line here is no more housing, plus more empty commercial buildings equals what I think is a frightening future for Fraser. Thank you.
And there aren't any affordable housing projects on the books aside from St. Louis Landing. So any residential project is market rate, which is $1 million plus for a condo. None of that is affordable.
My understanding is that some of this housing is going to be smaller units and that there will be units available to rent or to buy.
I don't know if they're smaller, but they're all market rate. So no one has applied for an affordable housing project or a workforce housing project.
Hey, Garrett.
Mhm.
Could you explain some of the incentives that we have in place now in our Riverwalk district that encourage deed restricted units in exchange for, and this doesn't necessarily happen for the business district, but it could be a part of the conversation.
Sure. And I guess just to clarify, the Planning Commission and Board did enact additional incentives that do now apply to the business zone district,
Okay.
as well as high density multifamily and the Riverwalk zone, as Trustee Souls mentioned. Essentially, they allow increases to allowed unit density, maximum building height, reductions to open space, parking reductions, things that are meant to help make developments pencil out when they include affordable housing. And those incentives are provided when only a percentage of the units in that development are deed restricted for certain income levels. Again, this was enacted and made effective earlier this year. I want to say sometime in the summer. So it is still fairly new. We do encourage property owners and developers to research those incentives and take them, attempt to incorporate them into their development, but it is not a hard requirement. And certainly the development proposals that we've seen since enacting them are not taking advantage of these incentives. So town staff is certainly willing to modify them or tweak them to make them more attractive.
And again, that's the sort of thing we can take a look at as a group and a community in the next 6 months. I get people's concerns, but there's a lot on the table for right now. And big picture, we're looking at big picture down the road, Fraser, another 20, 30 years and meeting all these different needs. So that's what I said.
I guess I'm a little confused because it comments make it sound like the town is mandating that we're going to only allow commercial there. I don't think that's what we're saying. I think we're saying pause 6 months, let's figure out what's best for the town, and we'll move forward. I don't see the 18-month delay. I'm not sure that's sort of hyperbole. I don't think that's, it's like, okay, now 6 months become 18 months. And okay, Clark, I know you have comments, but that's my 2 cents. That the town, I don't think we're saying we're not going to allow any residential, that you have to put commercial there if there's not a need. I mean, that's not what we're saying. We're saying put a pause on it for 6 months. Let's figure out what's best. And the town needs to make sure, that we protect the revenues that we need to flourish as a town.
I agree with you, and I think that the Ascent condominiums are teed
Are
up.
you still turned on? Is your mic still on? There we go.
Yeah. The Ascent condominiums are teed up. There's 25 units right there. That could keep you busy for the next 6 months. And we can have a conversation and have everybody come to a conclusion that makes most sense for the community at large.
Was there another person online that had their hand raised? Or did they take it down? Okay. I'm gonna go to Parnell and then we can go back to Clark.
Thank you. Thank you for the extra time, Mayor. Appreciate it. To Louis, is your comments, market rate housing, you guys all have this thing that market rate is all $1 million house. It depends on what you build. There's houses in Fraser that want 1.2 million. They ain't gonna get it anymore. There's townhomes sitting across the street that are brand new. They ain't getting their 1.6 million. They're struggling to get them sold. And if this truly is an emergency, and it's truly an economic emergency, and it's just crazy that we're running out of money in the town because we don't have it, then the entire town should go into a moratorium. The Riverwalk District, the housing over here, Clayton Court, all of them. And like Mark Gibson said, there shouldn't be any spending. You guys shouldn't be buying any more buildings. You shouldn't be investing in any more projects. You shouldn't be doing pump tracks in the middle of a field. If this really is an economic emergency, you guys should tighten the belts, lower your staff. Like eliminate half of your staff on the town and take their wages and bring them to normal wages. You know, a normal town manager makes 90,000 for a town this size. Our manager makes almost twice that. So if this really is a financial crisis and we're about to lose everything because of one development on how many acres? 20, Clark? 20 acres is going to kill the town. And we have 300,000 square feet of commercial on the north or the south end of town that we could develop and have that developed. If Peggy would stop fighting it so much, we could probably have had it done already. Right? I mean, if you guys are serious about this, be serious. Because market rate is what people pay. The market has gone down 19% on average in the town of Fraser. None of you, with the exception of Katie, have a business in the town of Fraser that relies on people in Fraser. Brian, you have a business that operates out of Fraser, but it doesn't rely on people from Fraser.
A lot of repeat customers from Fraser.
You have a lot of repeat customers, but it's not Fraser's. A lot of Winter Park, a lot of everybody else, a lot of tourists, not a lot of people from Winter Park. Peggy?
I can show you the data.
Julie? You guys won't even call your company Fraser Real Estate of Fraser. Call it Real Estate of Winter Park. Your son did a movie festival. Instead of calling it the Fraser Film Festival, which sounds way better to me, everyone was encouraged to call it the Winter Park Film Festival. So if you want Fraser and you really think this is an emergency, all of you stand up and say you're going to open a business. Louis, you going to open a business in Fraser?
Listen,
Katie?
Parnell, I don't appreciate you attacking.
Well,
people
I don't
personally.
appreciate you guys attacking
So
one
just
person either.
stop
That's
it.
what you've been
Just
doing.
stop it.
Tonight you've attacked Clark, and that's the only
I
person.
didn't attack Clark.
The only reason you guys are looking at this moratorium is because Peggy Smith wants to stop Clark from building a development. That is it. And I guarantee you she's made communications to each of you about why she wants it. You've moved meetings around. This meeting was originally scheduled for November 5th. You moved it today as an emergency meeting. There is no emergency meeting. This is not an emergency. Peggy even said it at the Planning Commission. It's not an emergency. We don't need this ordinance. You guys are doing this just to pick on Clark. So you are picking on one person. Almost all of your meetings are about stopping Clark. Every time I come, when I was on the board for 12 years, it was how to stop Clark. It makes no sense. He's the future of Fraser. He's what we've all wanted since 1979. The gondola, the buses, the businesses being busy. Too many people in town that you can't walk around. That's what we all wanted back in the 70s and 80s. Why? Because there was nobody here and there was no money. And now that you guys got projects where money's coming in, you want to put up a moratorium. Like Garrett said, you guys missed your opportunity to sneak this in because you hadn't even talked to the entire board yet about what you were doing. You used the planning commission to get approval to do it in an executive session, which is illegal. And that's why this meeting's illegal. And then you moved it from the 5th to today, the 29th. That's an illegal move. You can't do that. You can't just move things around because you want to.
Just to be clear,
This
it
is
is
public
fully
meetings.
legal. What has happened so far?
We'll see if it gets challenged. But if this is truly emergency, then you should be freezing the town of Fraser from doing anything, and you should be freezing the development. Just like the federal government, you should stop all spending if it's truly emergency. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruno. Go ahead.
Hi, Clark Lipscomb again. So you hear me talk about housing and inventory. You hear me say the word housing inventory. And Louis, if you'd watched the Planning Commission or been in our mayor manager meeting this Tuesday, you would heard me talk about diversity in housing and what we as a company are building, developing, and focused on. And it allows us to focus on things in different markets at different times. And for sale real estate right now is not great. We think rentals are really good. We're building another, Brian, you missed the Mill Apartments. That is truly low income, 60% AMI average, 30 to 80%. And right next to that, we're building 60 more units right now. They're a free market. The rents that are modeled in that project are less than your St. Louis Landing project. Okay. The beauty of free market, I'm a free market guy, is I'm going to do what it takes to fill my units. Okay. That's the supply and demand that Brandon just touched on. They did a very elegant job on. What I wanted to touch on is, I wish I could do applications in 2 months with all the design work that goes into applications. As all of you know, we submitted a sketch plan required by staff for Meyer Lot 2 in June. We had a planning commission August 27th. We've been designing that project since last year. Okay. Last year. It has geotech done this year. All of the engineering work, drainage, architectural design, that stuff doesn't happen in 2 weeks. My gosh, I wish it could. And if I could do that in 2 weeks, your staff could get them actually reviewed, approved, and into a board meeting so we could actually plat them and go put in the infrastructure, and bada bing, bada boom, we'd have more housing going than we know what to do with. But the cycle of doing this stuff, getting plans approved, takes over a year. So to your point, Lewis, you should come do what I do, and you would understand that a 6-month moratorium that ends next spring and then allows you to submit and then take a year-long process, because that's how long it takes now in the town of Fraser to get anything done. At least I have projects that are over 2 still in the pipeline. So let's say a year for approvals, then you're maybe breaking ground in 2027, maybe. Okay. So, and that's on the infrastructure. You got 5 to 6 months to put in the infrastructure. I once built homes concurrent with me putting in infrastructure. Almost killed me. Okay. Nice neighborhood, almost killed me. I'd rather get the deep wets in one season and go vertical the next. Okay. So I just want to clarify, this stuff didn't happen just because you guys had a moratorium on it. In fact, your moratorium was put on after the August 27th Planning Commission sketch plan hearing, where we received nothing but, this looks really good. We didn't receive any like, you should change this, or gee whiz, we'd like commercial here. No comments of that nature. What is the purpose of Planning Commission? It's an advisory committee to you all and the town and to the people and the applicants. Oh my gosh, right? That's what triggered the executive session they had from June. From June, y'all knew that that sketch plan was submitted. And then that night, August 27th, after that hearing, you had an executive session to discuss this moratorium. Okay. So I just want to be clear, this project that you're trying to stop has been in the pipeline for a year, has had a lot of money spent on it, and we relied on the zoning that's in place. And we don't appreciate trying to be stopped. And I think it flies in the face of the housing crisis that we have and what the citizens of this town want. They don't want Walmart, Peggy. And Walmart's not coming, Peggy. Come on, let's get real. They want housing. So let's just stop this nonsense, work together, and go build more housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Lord. Are we at a good point to close public comment, or do you want to hear some more? Okay, sounds good. All right, let's discuss. I'll go. So I will say, land rights are very important to me, and changing zoning is a really big deal. People have bought this land and they planned on the zoning that they had. And so I understand what everyone is saying. I totally get that. I also understand not wanting to be told what to do, especially by a town. So I'm just going to throw that out there. And I'll even go further to say, I've talked to a lot of developers. They all say housing first, commercial second. Makes sense. You build your population base so that it can support the businesses. Now, that being said, we've gone through this process of this comprehensive plan for the last, what, like 2 years, it feels like. The input that we've heard from people in town is that they want this walkable, beautiful pedestrianized kind of downtown with shops and restaurants and bars that they can go to. And just like Parnell said, walking distance. That land is currently more or less available. We can expand, the business district is set up and has availability. And once, to Peggy's point, once that is sold residential, it's gone. You can't get it back. So regarding this topic in itself, the rezoning part of this topic, I'm personally undecided, but I do want to move forward with this moratorium for 6 months so that we can talk to more people. We can talk to Grand Park and everybody else who's affected by this, and decide what we want Fraser to look like, and talk to the general public as well.
Why could we have been talking to them 6 months ago?
We could have.
So I don't
but-
really, I think it's targeted too. I think it has something to do with personal problems with some of the board members and not just one developer, maybe a few, I don't know. But I think if we wanted to talk to him, we could have talked to him 6 months ago.
Yeah, fair point. But we're kind of down this path at this point, and I don't love the 6 month because I understand that turns into 18 months. But again, for transparency, we need to be able to talk to the public. If we can do as much as possible in 3 months and make our decision, that would be even better. I see the flip side of the coin of the public saying, "Oh, now the board's moving without our consent." So I think the easiest answer is moratorium for 6 months. Try and make it as short as possible. Talk to everybody that we can. Make a good decision based on what the majority feels is right for zoning.
It's a 6 months hard and fast. I mean, is that required by law, state law?
It's up to 6 months.
Yeah,
What's that?
we could do shorter.
It can be up to 6 months.
Up to 6 months.
And
So
if you design an ordinance and the board does move forward with any changes to the zoning, here, there's a 30-day publication process for that to go through.
Right.
So, if there is changes made and you want to implement that before the moratorium is lifted, you would need to account for that timeline as well. So when you feel like you have a final ordinance ready for adoption, you need at least 30 days for it to be published in the newspaper, which typically requires, 35 to 40 days notice to the newspaper to get it in the newspaper to be published, and then adopted by the town board. And you would lift the moratorium from there.
so you could shorten it, but you can't lengthen it.
That's my understanding. Garrett Cooper, if you guys want to speak to that.
The
Counsel?
ordinance as written does allow for extensions. I don't know under what circumstances. I mean, I think if the code amendment process and potential regulation changes, if that's taking us longer than 6 months, I think that would be a valid reason, but it is certainly the commitment and intention of town staff to, if enacted, this moratorium only lasts for 6 months or less. And just to bring back Trustee Quickland's question about passing an emergency ordinance for these business zone regulations, that is also an option that's on the table, such that, let's say, we evaluate these changes, we arrive at a final ordinance in March, and it's ready to be adopted at that first board meeting in March. It could be potentially adopted as an emergency ordinance, so those changes are effective immediately. And at that same meeting, the board rescinds the moratorium. Does that make sense, Trustee Gregory?
Is that any zoning changes, is that contingent on the comp plan being passed already? I mean, this is a product of the comp plan. So
Right.
if that's February already, and what if that
Right.
gets pushed back again? I'm concerned about that relationship between the comp plan and zoning changes and this timeline.
Sure. Again, the intention is not to delay adoption of the comprehensive plan any further than it already has been. I do recognize, questions about the possibility of further delays. Staff and our consultants are committed that there will not be any.
They
So
charge us money for these delays.
it will be adopted in February under the budget increase that was approved by the board a couple months ago.
I think we're having a hard time with it, is telling someone what they can do with their own property when it's well within their right and the code of Fraser to do what they want to do. That's a hard pill to swallow for me. That'd be hard for me. If I had plans and someone was to come to me and tell me that, hey, you can't do that. For what reason? Because we have that hypothetical problem.
The problem is, what if all of our commercial got downgraded to residential and we lost that income stream?
That could be a problem, but it's
That's,
hypothetical.
that's
It's
the,
not-
if people say we need housing, what if they change all of their commercial product to a housing product?
If they do, they
'Cause-
have the right to do that.
Under
On
the
their
current
property.
zoning, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Safeway's gonna do it.
No, they spent too much money on their remodel and it looks really good. We got the nicest Safeway store now in the state.
With the doors.
Damn, it's gonna bring people in too. I'm gonna tell you, they're gonna spend money there.
All right,
I'm gonna
let's
say
bring it-
thank you
let's
every
bring
time
it
they
back.
check out.
Okay.
Anyway.
Any more discussion?
I think I've made my comments.
Okay. Well, yeah, we can.
Could I make a motion?
We've closed public comment at this point. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion.
No,
We're-
that
we're-
didn't take a great question. If it's burning.
Close it.
We closed public comment.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
If I may speak, for Daily acting as town attorney, just on some of the concerns of the legality here. Mr. Quinn's letter and some comments otherwise from the constituents here tonight have kind of threatened some legal repercussions based on how the board votes. That is in relation to something that happened in August. Two events are unrelated. How I spoke tonight, you are not going to be subject to legal repercussions for an event that happened in August. The concern with the August executive session was that it was invalidly called. However, executive sessions called for attorney-client privilege can be called, and this communication necessarily includes the ability for the client, in this case the town, to discuss concerns and relevant issues with a specific legal question with their town attorney so that they may get accurate legal advice. Therefore, the executive session called in August, we do not believe there are any concerns with the legality of that. And as I mentioned, how you act tonight should not be swayed by these comments or concerns.
Antoinette, just to provide some clarification to the public and to the board. Garrett, I mentioned earlier that this requires a 75% vote. Can you just explain for the emergency ordinances, what is the, based on 7 board members, what is the requirement for yays and nays?
My understanding is that there must be 6 affirmative votes in order for this emergency ordinance to pass.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance number 527, imposing a temporary moratorium on land use applications in the business zone district and declaring an emergency.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Any further discussion? Okay, let's do a roll call vote. Let's start with Trustee Souls.
Yay.
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 Nay.
Nay.
So it does not pass.
Does not pass.
So at this point, direction from the board, would you like us to continue to pursue the kind of an input and workshop series for the business district zoning?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And
Staff will work
let's
to
push forward on
accommodate
zoning
that.
changes.
Just a question, would the board be open to a shorter moratorium to give us a little bit more time to figure this out? 3 months?
Well,
But
that means
then
we have
it
to have it
doesn't
done in
overlap with the
2.
comprehensive
What's that?
plan.
Means you have to have it done in 2 so that they can publish it the last 30 days.
And the
With the
compromise.
holidays, I think that's a little
February.
tight.
So
I don't know.
it'll be-
I mean, I'd like it to happen, but
Okay.
all right, I moved to adjourn.
second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.